This is a message to all my supporters of this podcast. I'm introducing a new supporters program. You can contribute a small amount as a one-off payment to show your love for this podcast. Thank you in advance for all your contributions.
A payroll and HR company needs to be prepared for whatever's going to happen. You could say that over 70 years of experience helping businesses all over the world run smoothly is good preparation. But for ADP, that's not enough. To make sure millions of people are getting paid on time and in compliance, we're staying on top of each new piece of legislation. So when it comes down to it, ADP isn't just a payroll and HR company. We're the company that helps you navigate the complexities. ADP, HR talent, time, benefits, and payroll. Informed by data and designed for people.
Hi everyone. So this is what I want to talk about today, is about learning. So I came from you would probably call it a traditional education background. So although I didn't go to a great primary school, but I then went to a very good secondary school, and I then went and did a degree, A-levels and then a degree, and then came out of university with a lot of education and not a lot of skills. Or business skills, let's say. So I went through a phase of, I loved reading when I was younger, and I loved reading when I was in my 20s, and then I stopped. I stopped focusing on other things, and it's not until the last probably 18 months, 2 years, that I've really started to love reading, but I tend to do it through listening audiobooks. And the other thing that I used to love was reading fiction, but I've now gone into hardcore, into non-fiction, and I'm loving it. I must admit, it's really interesting and enlightening to hear about other people, with more experienced people, that. So, for example, I've just finished Ray Dalio's Principles, which was really fascinating from a hedge fund point of view. I've read a couple of books of Tim Ferriss. One of the UK people is Rob Moore, who's done a couple of books recently, Money and the Leverage book, Life Leverage, and it was really was a change in my shift when I started listening to the books again and started really trying to implement it in my corporate life and try and think how entrepreneurs think. So this wasn't just books, but it was also podcasts, and I was listening to entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of substance and there's a lot of content out there on entrepreneurship. Now, I've talked about this in my vlogs, in my video blogs, but one of the things that I started to do was trying to be a corporate employee with an entrepreneurial mindset, which has proved quite successful for me. But back to the learning, it really meant that once I started listening to really interesting books and really focusing in on understanding them, the crucial point for me was, from being just a passive reader and listener, I then started taking notes. So just like being at university or at school, whatever, you're there listening to people's opinions and listening to the way people have done things. But the important point is to take notes. Now, this can be written form. I actually do it on my phone because it's a lot easier. I can have my earphones in while I'm traveling and sort of type in notes. That is the critical path for me, because you stop being a passive listener and then you're actually an engaged listener and you're participating in what they're saying. So when you're listening to this and you think to yourself, oh, well, actually, maybe audiobooks is something for me, I would say, if you want to make real improvements and real change, do take notes. Crucial, do take notes. So as I say, I travel and do it on my phone, but you can be at home and you can listen and you can write them up, and then you can then take pictures of them and save them in Evernote if that's how you want to do it. But take notes, put it in your own words, interpret what they're saying. And also the other thing about the notes is that you've got them there forever. So you can go back to them in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and then refresh your mind about what they were sort of, what the author is trying to tell you. It's it's a key skill, and it's a really important skill. So I definitely promote you guys to do that. So what I do also on top of the books is listen to documentaries and watch documentaries on YouTube. Now, there's a difference again from someone who comes home from work exhausted, probably a little bit demoralised, not liking what they're doing, and they just want to come home and watch EastEnders, or they want to relax and watch a CSI or whatever it is. That is one option. I would say that actually is, again, you're being quite passive, because you're sitting in front of the television and letting it wash all over you, and it can be interesting. It's probably not going to be educational, but lots of people find escapism, and do not say there's not a point in people's lives where you need a little bit of escapism. But I suppose what my maybe controversial argument is that really, if you want to improve yourself, you don't want to be passive all the time. And when you watch a YouTube video on a documentary about a person that's inspired you, so recently I have watched one on Nelson Mandela. I watched an extended interview with Al Pacino. And there's been various political figures. I read a book about Benjamin Franklin, which was really interesting as well. So I would say people that have inspired you in the past, whether it's a sportsman. I've watched a couple on sports people as well, Pele and actually Sir Clive Woodward, which was really interesting as well. I think that's also another way that you're using your brain a little bit more, because you'll start seeing trends. And one of the trends I saw from watching YouTube documentaries is all the people that are really successful. And we're talking people that have gone from nothing to, whether it's wealth or fame or success. All these people, Nelson Mandela as well, have that inner steel. So when things are going badly, and that might be as a young child, or that might be as a bereavement of a mother or father quite young, or a key person in your life, like a lifelong friend that dies, they all have experienced something like that. Richard Branson with dyslexia. All these things give children, adults, this inner steel that they want to succeed. And I would say that is one of the key things that differentiates your good people, your like positive people that just want to live for their kids, live for their family, live for their wife, live for their local community, and you can contribute huge amounts, and you don't have to do it in a business setting. You could offer your time to charities or to local communities, and you can help build a school or repaint a school. And these are superb ways of being able to improve your life. But again, it's stopping being passive, and it's starting to engage with people and starting to engage with your surroundings. So I would say that's a critical point. And the other thing is, the reason why notes and doing things are important, because it emphasises you to start to do something with that information, rather than sit in front of EastEnders and just passively watch a story unfold in front of you, where if you participate in this world, you're the actor, you're the main man who is having the biggest impact on the story. Now, for me, it's just so much more interesting to be the main person in my story, rather than watching people in EastEnders or Coronation Street or whatever the thing is that you like to watch. So I would say it's all about this mind shift of stop being a consumer and start becoming a producer. Produce things, produce content. This is why I'm doing this, is to try and improve myself. And there's little pockets of things which I will do whilst doing this podcast, which hopefully will improve me, will be listening back and which is hard, but listening back and sort of seeing, have I got any any ums, or is there any pauses which I could iron out? And this could be for work as well, when I'm presenting in front of clients, or presenting in front of internal people, but large numbers or whatever. I want to stop myself from the ums, which cause sort of. It's a sort of, for the audience, it's a little bit off-putting. So this is one of the things that I want to do. I want to give my thoughts. I think I can give some people, I'm not saying all people, some value with what I'm doing. So the only reason I'm doing this is because I think other people can be hopefully inspired. Inspired is such a strong word for me, because I've found so much inspiration from people I've met, my mentor, my people that I listen to on podcasts, on books. And so I want you to hopefully be inspired by what I have to say. So I just take on to that next step. I always loved learning. So from my mum and my dad, we always read. She encouraged me to read the classics. And then I went on a developmental, let's say, in my teenage years, in my early 20s, of reading fiction, but sort of Generation X was one of the books I read. I could list a couple of them, like there's some science fiction in there as well. But I always like to learn. I always like to absorb information. Now, some people are like that. And I would say it's something that if you were able to develop that skill, I think everyone at a point has an ability. If you like reading, if you're dyslexic and you struggle with reading, then audiobooks are there. If you struggle with concentration on audiobooks, then there's YouTube and there's documentaries, and you can buy them. You can download them on YouTube. You can get them on Netflix. There's plenty of them, and Amazon Prime. There's plenty of them around. But I would encourage you to try and learn. Pick things up from the greatest. So while I'm thinking here, I'm thinking Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer, the greatest sportsman. It would be really interesting to watch a documentary about him. His inner steel of refusing to go to Vietnam, and then being stripped of your title, and him knowing that he could come back from that in the wilderness. That is incredible, and it's just an amazing story, and I'd like to see something about that. So that's something I will do hopefully in the next week or so. So it's really bringing on the guys that have made an impact on your life, and listening and learning, absorbing, taking it in what these guys say. You can, if you learn from the greatest, you can be the greatest. So there are always options for how to learn. So I've given you a few there. And the other thing is, another reason why I want to learn and listen and understand and absorb is I don't know everything. Unlike my 21-year-old self, where I thought I knew everything, and that is not unusual for a 21-year-old self who's just come out of university, I've learned I really don't know everything, and there is a lot of people where I can learn from, whether it's business, technology, coaching. So I've talked about Gary Vee, I've talked about Tim Ferriss, I've talked about Rob Moore. There's business people, Steve Jobs, there's Bill Gates, there's Elon Musk, there's Richard Branson. Technology, I've mentioned some of these guys as well. These are the guys that know it. Have experienced it, have done it. So I think it's a sort of another mindset, is accepting that you don't know everything. And it's actually quite an enlightening experience to realise that you don't know everything. And there are people that have done it, experienced it, done what you're doing now, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, who remember it, have then progressed. Whether it's a CEO of a business, a startup entrepreneur, a partner, a CEO, whatever it is in your business, you can learn from these guys. And you should want to learn from these guys. Because as I said, 10, 20 years ago, they have been exactly what you are. So there are partners that I work with who have done similar things to me. And I know that listening to them, talking to them, understanding, and the difference again is the difference between sort of hearing what they say and listening actively on what they say. You can learn so much from them. So there will be people in your life, if you're a startup entrepreneur, that you might need to go to a mastermind, or you might need to go to a networking event, or someone in a shared office that you speak to, that you realise, oh my God, this person knows so much more than me. I need to be near this person. I need to speak to him. I need to learn from him. So I would say there will be people. Some people might become mentors that you pay. Some people might be advisors, and that's an informal advisor that just every time. Like I've got someone who was my mentor at work, and she has now changed her job, so she has less impact on my life. But every time she comes into my office, I see her. I say hello. Have you got time for a coffee? We have a cup of coffee, we have a chat. She tells me about things in her life. I tell her experiences that I have had since we last spoke. And she's there, and she gives good advice and gives good advice to people. Another example is another mentor of mine that moved offices to California. Now, I have something to do with him every week, but I find time on a semi-regular basis that we can just have a chat, just have a catch-up. I took some of his clients on, so he knows a little bit of the background of personalities. So there's always opportunities from people that you meet, and they might be someone you meet once a month, once a day, once a week, every couple of months, maybe every 6 months at a stretch. If they're really valuable and they haven't got a lot of time, then maybe that's the 6 month is the point. But it's just that realization that you don't know everything, which is so enlightening. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I know how to run a business, I know how to hustle, I know how to grind, I know how to be successful. Are you successful? Do you have a multi-million pound business? If the answer is no, and you're just starting, or you've been doing it a while and you're making money, okay, but you still have the ambition to do more, then you probably would be useful speaking to someone who knows a little bit more than you. So find them. Also, just as I mentioned before, like people on podcasts, you can really I get slightly obsessed by a couple of these people on podcasts because I just hear them, they inspire me. I then want to absorb more of their information, and invariably the people that I've mentioned, Tony Robbins included, have got lots of things online, and there's lots of things to be able to listen to and learn from. So they don't actually have to always be physical or people you know. They can also be podcasts you can learn from. Something that as a student I was very interested in history. Now you might think, well, what's history? My degree was in politics. What's that got to do with life? Well, actually it's quite fascinating to see people from the past and how they did things. Things are usually the same. They're different. They're always different. But a lot of things are the same as well. So you can learn things from history. And people that I studied in history and politics can aid me, can assist me. It also gave me an insight into human behaviour, humanity, which is something slightly different, but it's important that you think about humans. A lot of my business is based on relationships and understanding people and what's give and take. You give something to someone and then maybe take a little bit later on. You don't take first and think you'll give later, because you might not give later, and that doesn't add value to anyone else. So definitely you should try and if you're thinking about humanity and humans and how they interact, how their relationships are based, a lot of the sort of social sciences, let's say, gives you insight into that. Now, a lot of people who wants to be technology entrepreneurs are interested in coders, and yeah, absolutely. The Bill Gates Now, Steve Jobs didn't do a lot of coding, but his partner and these people that really added value from a technical background. But all of them, if they became CEOs, had to learn how to treat people, had to train themselves and become better humans and better leaders. You can get great leaders from the past. Now, I'm not going to name any because it might be slightly political, and I don't want to go into a sort of political realm of what a good leader is versus what's not a good leader. Let's take a very obvious example, which I mentioned before, is Nelson Mandela, a great leader, a great humanitarian, a great person to change, be a change maker for people's lives. They are true leaders, and I think there are examples of those in business, which is maybe slightly easier to or easier to explain. But leadership is something that often most people learn, and therefore, if you're reading, listening, absorbing, you're then going to learn from the best. And I would say that is predominantly the best way of being able to be successful, is learning from the best. So just to wrap up this podcast, I would say I've talked a lot about learning and a lot about listening and understanding and taking notes, etc. Take some of the tidbits from what I've said, think about them, maybe take notes, listen to this again, take notes and see if there's anything that interests you that you can take forward and inspires you. Hopefully there's at least one person that hears this and is inspired to pick up a book or download an audiobook and listen to it. So please, if you would like to follow me on Twitter, it's M_J_Hayward, and that's HAYWARD. Please follow me. I also am doing video blogs on Twitter as well as YouTube. So by all means, please listen to my stuff. If you've got any comments, or you'd like to subscribe, or you'd like to retweet or follow or like on Twitter, then please do. And I will pick you up another time. Thank you very much.